Recently, a Korean company gaining attention in the United States is Korea Zinc. As China increases its mineral weaponization, the United States has invested billions in Korea Zinc. Let's examine this topic and find out more. Vice President James David Vance recently said China's control of the gallium market has distorted it so much that it's now unrecognizable, making strategic investment and diversification disadvantageous. At the same time, the Trump administration made plans to invest billions of dollars to build its own supply chain, and the company that took the lead in this was Korea Zinc. Let's first learn what gallium is before examining the United States' plan to build a gallium supply chain. Gallium is a mineral that is absolutely essential for advanced industries such as semiconductors, solar panels, high-performance communication equipment, and laser LEDs. Because it's such an important mineral, our government even included gallium as one of the 33 key minerals designated in the Special Act on Resource Security. The United States has also put it on its list of strategically managed resources, but the biggest problem is that China has a monopoly on gallium. For example, in 2024 alone, the global production of gallium was about 762 tons, and 98.7% of that was produced in China. Basically, China has a complete monopoly on it. So countries around the world, including Korea, have tried to break free from this gallium monopoly. That's because China started using gallium as a card in the trade war. China started controlling the export of gallium and germanium in 2013, and by the end of 2024, they decided to completely block exports to the United States. As a result, the price of gallium soared very quickly. In just 2 years, the price of gallium in the United States rose fourfold. Industries dependent on gallium, like semiconductors, energy, and defense, faced greater challenges. The United States, not being naive, had to address China's monopoly. That's why the United States decided to bet billions of dollars on Korea Zinc. The United States invested about $1.9 billion, which is around 2.8 trillion won, to establish a joint venture called Crucible with Korea Zinc. This joint venture, Crucible, will invest $4.7 billion, or about 6.8 trillion won. They chose to build the first United States gallium production facility in Tennessee. Here, they plan to produce not only gallium, but also 11 types of key minerals and 13 types of non-ferrous metals, aiming for an annual production capacity of up to 540,000 tons starting in 2030. You might ask why they chose Korea Zinc. Well, Korea Zinc is actually an incredible company. First, let's look at why the United States picked Tennessee as the location for its first production base. The Clarksville smelter in Tennessee has been struggling with deficits, but Korea Zinc sees high growth potential compared to the investment costs. By hiring the skilled workers already at the smelter and passing on their expertise, and by using the accumulated waste here as intermediate raw materials, it's easy to extract new minerals. But it might sound a bit strange. How exactly do they use the waste? Korea Zinc has the technology to extract valuable minerals from what's classified as waste and scrap resources. Thanks to this, by using them directly to create new minerals, the raw material costs go down and the products become more competitive. Above all, Korea Zinc has advanced technology for producing various strategic minerals, so it wasn't a bad choice for the United States either. After all, Korea Zinc owns refineries in Korea, the United States, and Australia. It can also be a vital link in the resource alliance among the three countries. Currently, the United States aims to build a resource supply base to counter China's mineral weaponization. Recently, a 55-nation resource alliance called FORGE was launched, and Korea is actually the first chair country of this alliance. The core of FORGE is price intervention. Even if China disrupts the allied supply chain through price dumping, the plan is to guarantee purchases above a certain price to maintain investment stability in mining and refining. There, under what's called Project Volvo, the United States government has invested over $12 billion, which is more than 17 trillion won, to strategically stockpile critical minerals. The United States is planning to handle the supply, refining, and distribution of these minerals. Korea Zinc is one of the companies leading the practical work here. Through Project Volvo, Korea Zinc will process the world's highest grade zinc concentrate. Through Project Volvo, the minerals obtained are not only zinc, but also germanium and gallium. Korea Zinc is expected to handle the refining of germanium and gallium at the refinery they are building in Tennessee, United States of America. In other words, since Korea Zinc is playing a key role in the massive resource alliance that the United States is planning, that's why the United States made this decision. Of course, gallium is not produced only in the United States. In Korea as well, about 15.5 tons of gallium have been produced annually in earnest since 2018. China almost monopolizes the global gallium market, and more than 70% of Korea's gallium imports come from China. In a situation where domestic production is desperately needed, the fact that these companies are starting to appear one by one seems quite hopeful. And when gallium is produced, byproducts from the process are generated. With these byproducts, we can additionally secure more than 16 tons of indium annually. But indium is a rare metal that is essential for advanced industries like semiconductors, solar power, and displays. When we produce gallium, we can also produce indium together. In fact, Korea is one of the countries that produces a lot of indium after China, but the problem starts here. Even if the United States builds a refinery in Tennessee and Korea Zinc goes in to start producing gallium, that's not the end. In fact, the real battle is likely to begin from that point. That's because China has no reason to just sit back and watch. China is a country that's very used to shaking up the market using minerals. They could reduce supply to drive prices up, but on the other hand, they could also intentionally crash the prices. If China wants to, they can lower the price of gallium at any time. New United States refineries would then operate at a loss, making it hard for American companies to recover investments and causing them to struggle. This method is frightening because it can ruin rival countries' industries without firing a shot. And what's even more dangerous is that China isn't just fighting with gallium alone. If the gallium card gets blocked, China can just move on to another card. For example, in the case of antimony, it's a very important material in the ammunition and explosives industries, and China already controls its supply. Graphite is vital for electric vehicle batteries, while rare earth elements are crucial for modern weapon systems, including fighter jets, radars, missiles, and guidance devices. China may package these minerals together and use this strategy to disrupt the West by restricting access to some of them. That's why a gallium supply chain alone doesn't reassure us. And there's another reason too. Even if the United States builds refineries, without securing raw materials, the factories could be empty. Refining technology alone isn't enough. Without concentrates and intermediates, production halts. China is also heavily invested in this raw material market, with its capital securing assets in African mines, South American resources, and Southeast Asian supply chains. So even if the United States builds factories, if China blocks the supply of raw materials at the source, the whole plan could be shaken. In this case, the United States would have no choice but to create a system that controls everything from mines to refining and the entire supply chain. At this point, it's not only an industrial issue, but also one of diplomacy and alliances, making Korea especially important to the United States now. It's not due to advanced technology, but because the United States needs a reliable partner for practical tasks as it builds an alliance-based front in this resource war. The longer this fight continues, the more likely China is to strike back even harder. Then where does Korea stand in all this? What position will Korea be in? Korea is not just a bystander in this fight. In fact, it's highly likely to end up on the front lines. As Korea becomes more involved in the United States' core mineral supply chain, Korean companies become a strategic concern for China. China already has experience imposing economic retaliation on several countries, and their methods are quite diverse. They pressure companies through tactics like restricting customs clearance for certain items or conducting administrative investigations. They claim it's about laws and regulations, but really, they've used it to send diplomatic messages. And the reason why Korea is especially at risk is because Korea is a country that needs both the Chinese and American markets. The United States is a security ally with growing semiconductor and defense ties, but China remains a major market and vital supply chain link for Korean manufacturing. In this situation, the more Korean companies appear to cooperate with the United States in the mineral war, the greater the possibility that China will use Korea as a pressure card. Especially items like gallium and germanium are important for Korea's semiconductor and display industries, and if China controls the supply of these, Korean manufacturing will be directly affected. If China wants to set an example in the mineral war, Korea might be the most suitable target. Since Korea's industrial structure is closely connected to China, the pressure from China could have a greater effect. For this reason, Korea must seize the opportunity while also managing risks. So what the Korean government and companies need to do in the future is clear. It's necessary to join hands with the United States to build a supply chain, but at the same time, we need to prepare scenarios for how China might retaliate and be ready for them. Of course, changes in mineral supply will also be necessary. A strategic vision should expand reserves and invest in recycling technology. Without this, Korea could waste money and face double pressure from the United States and China. The reason Korea Zinc is in the spotlight right now might not be because the company is doing well, but rather a sign that Korea is entering the center of a huge mineral war. What do you all think about Korea Zinc right now? Please let us know in the comments. That's it for this video. Thank you.